Inside a balloon there is no air that does not splash on everyone. Thus concludes today's lesson in Justice and the Mathematical Distribution of Criticism and Humor. There is the mechanicalistic evolution of the collective, and then that other possibility. A real individual has no interest in the first noted. Death is the end of all discussion, maturity of many's desire to think. The human cries most commonly heard, reflective of the actual transcendental desire, often sound something like these. Hit it. I am captive, set me free. Awaken me, for I sleep. Heal me, I am ill, and so on. And if you don't understand that there is more, then there's not. No. The miser's fearful rationale. 'Tis better to waste it than to use it all up. And you might take warning yourself that there is a bit of the miser in everyone's thinking process. The legends continue. On one world, everyone has an imaginary job that they take seriously. Then a kid came along who was upset by this, but he eventually got over it. What's going on around here? A poem. Hormones ahoy, what a boy, that a boy. Neurons away, what do you say? Voices above, voices below. Just because something rhymes doesn't mean that it means anything. Which now leaves the question, was that a slam at something in particular? The risk with ordinary would-be mystics is that if they get over wanting to be rich, famous, sexy, or powerful, they get over wanting to be a mystic. The place, earth. The topic, man. The specifics, exercise and consciousness. We all run in our sleep. Only exceptionally gifted dummies bother to criticize something that's already popular. Oh, taxi! That's the title. The simple tend to live in the body, the partially civilized in the emotions, and the uptown in their head. Where can I drop you off? Okay, transcendental traveler's tip. A real man can't be dropped off anywhere by an ordinary man. With consciousness comes a sense of individuality. And with the sense of individuality comes the impression of having a choice. And with the impression of having a choice comes the belief that one can make wrong choices. And with the belief that one can make wrong choices comes the suspicion that others may be making better choices. And with the suspicion that others may be making better choices comes the need and ability to criticize. Envy the connection between temper and intelligence. If you have no explosives, it matters little whether your fuse is short or not. A nonpartisan detailing of local conditions is never very popular in that it neither comforts the conservatives nor encourages the liberals. Life needs men to hold partisan mental positions in the same way that men need two legs to walk. The first warning went out. Watch out for the Philistines. They have no taste, and they're always complaining. Then came the second one. Further beware, the Philistines, having no taste, could have set up camp in you. Life's response to the partitioning players. You wish for no one to lose, but for this to be so, no one could win. There's a group who each day makes up the news, and then they meet every 3 years to decide which news is good enough to become history. Envy the connection between intelligence and appearance. You can lessen the impact of being stupid if you're good looking or dress funny. To ordinary cows, there is a certain mysticism to the herd itself, which allows the individual bovine to be comfortable letting the collective do his thinking for him. Father, if you look only at the bad in life, you'll never see the good. And the skeptical son replied, and the good being that the bad is not permanent. On the ballot on one planet is a referendum on the question of changing the word bad to sad and good to happy. Would you, as an alert linguistic poll watcher, care to consider what possible effect this might ultimately have on their thinking should it pass? Once you can see around corners, you can recognize life as being death's original death grip. Theory overheard from a passing parallel reality. There is not actually so much of a continuing great mystical work as there is the periodic appearance of one mystically inclined individual and a collection of people who like to hear him talk about it. "'Tis good," reflected one man, "that theories too disturbing are always from afar." Yet another reason that man's most enduring myths and religious tales are never set in the present. In the connection between intelligence and height. If you're short, you're probably not as tall as a lot of people. Well, hey, just how far do you think we could go with this? The world of the body, being completed, works. The mind's world, not being, doesn't. One man sent himself an anonymous note which said, "If you do not meet me at midnight by the old post office, I will publicly reveal all that I know about you." Yet another operational detailing of a mystic would be to say that he is one who dearly wishes to visit exotic places and determines that the very best ones are within him. I was going to do theatrics like in him, but you could either go in him, or according to where the country you're from. According to how evolved you are, perhaps we should say. At least geographically, people take umbrage. Of course, those living in the areas I was thinking about don't know what the hell umbrage means anyway. Do you? That something felt like Professor Wince's with... The alert's ever-ready reminder regarding matters intellectual amongst the collective. Popularity is spelled one of three ways, either B-L-A-N-D or S-A-F-E or M-E-A-N-I-N-G-L-E-S-S. How this strange hunger hides and operates. There is a certain fuel necessary to run all engines, and when taken away, makes a few run even better. Personal challenge, lay it down just to see if anybody can explain that one. If I said it was my birthday or something, would everybody go, I get it? Well, you could lie. You know how people are on holidays. One man's motto, be good to yourself. Because if genes ever feel they're getting shortchanged, they'll make you wish you'd paid by mail on credit. Inside the collective, it's always raining somewhere. That last item was left in its direct 8-word declarative form, since all of you should be well beyond the point of always needing an added sales pitch for being an intellectual. A lover without his other half, should he also be a warrior, doesn't really even have the half he supposedly has. And yet indeed, still another reason that this sort of thing is so intriguing to some. That is, it's beyond even the realm of do or die into the singular area of do or do. There was another version of that, but I'll let it slide. New theoretical physics for a new theoretical universe. If you define, redefine, and redefine a thing over and over and over sufficiently, the thing will either disappear, change its molecular structure, or your perception thereof will be refreshed, or something. Life will flow through you either as a trickle, a sewer, or a river. Mystics want to be oceans. If the more conscious dealt in insults, they'd need but one. That is, to say that something was pedantic and repetitious, that is, boring, including oneself, I might add. Cows and sheep are near transcendental for the simple reason they stay in herds. The ordinary want to either live or die. The extraordinary want both together now. Tips and tools of the mythical writer. Think with a pencil, see with a pen. Real mysticism is in an individual insisting that his mental self be completed during his lifetime, contrary to what is the norm for everyone else. A man who tried to philosophically reflect on everything about him once found himself in direct touch with life, and asked if, concerning a certain matter, life-minded, if he attempted to think about it in a particular way he described. And life replied, no, that's why you are man. Mm-hmm. You can try to think about things any way you want. But now the wide-eyed should be able to hear a mystic described as no more than simply a real individual. One guy says, you got to be crazy to want to do this. And the second guy says, yeah, I know. And the first guy says, so why'd I bother to tell you? And now our sports update. Just suspecting it so's enough for some people. Oh, all right. It's 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, and a hush falls over the stands as the big third baseman makes his way to the plate. Are we going to take a vote that people don't believe that was the last one? As far as all the things about, or the various descriptions of man being in the nervous system incomplete or collectively incomplete, there was one in here tonight somewhere, that points out that there is always has been, but even as per my diagrams of the nervous system, when it gets up to the collective level, which we'll now assume, you can operationally assume everyone on this planet is now at that level. And of course, within the level are varying degrees of no great importance. But that humanity collectively is to the point that everyone is literate. Everyone is verbal, I should say, which is the perforce evidence that humanity is now intellectually aflame. That everyone is intellectually conscious at a nominal level. And then after that, the description of people being dissatisfied, irritated, upset, simply on the basis, although it's called amongst the herd, amongst the collective by many names, it's blamed on curses from God, and etc. Up to the level of consciousness, as you've got to be able to see if you see anything, there is no disturbance, there is no upset. You're hungry, you eat, you're sleepy, you go to bed, etc. From the intellect up, nothing actually works in the sense of it being conclusive, because you cannot think enough to get through thinking. Or to use the kinds of examples that are normally bandied about under religious guise or social criticism, which it's not, but it's easy to point out other ways that you can't ever be famous enough. The religious have taken that normally, especially in the West, to be that God don't want you to be famous. Which I don't know whether you ever thought about parenthetically. It's a pretty cheap shot. I mean, he's the most famous person around, according to them. And that's kind of chintzy and half-assed for somebody to get that famous at our expense. I mean, he's only famous because you got an audience, and then to tell, at any rate. Anyway, they say, and you can't ever get rich enough. And by rich, of course, in the intellectual realm, we're not talking about having enough to eat. We're not talking about actual possessions that have anything to do with bowel survival. because that is not what they mean by being greedy. Because the body, from the level of consciousness down, will only eat if you're sane and ordinary, which is all we're talking about, the only ones we're interested in, even minimally. You eat and that's it. The body, you've got to have an intellect going, or you'd be like an animal. You do not see dogs, cows, sheep eat until they seem to be full and there's some left, and they look around like, does anybody have a doggy bag or a human bag? They do not take it with them. You eat and then you walk away from it. They sleep and they get up, and if it was dry enough that they slept, they get up and they don't say, somebody save my place here. Well, they may come back accidentally, they may not. So the whole idea of possessions, when I say greed, I was using the ordinary religious, spiritual, moralistic denunciation in general that humanity bespeaks as being a negative attribute. That kind of greed is not actual possessions. It's not that you shouldn't save up enough food there in the cave to feed your family once they wake up if you got it before they did. By greed, they're talking about financial paper wealth. And they're correct. You're never satisfied, which would be mystics, that is the religious. It's easy to denounce because they're always trying to encourage men along the lines of despising the flesh, which is despising the physical body, because we've got to do better. And so they say, it's a good thing that you're here being a whatever, a Catholic or Jew or Muslim. It's a good thing you joined up here. And then you go, well, why? Or it's a good thing you got here. And you go, because all your life you tried to do it, and they just start filling in the normal things that normal people try to do if they're not doing something abnormal like this. Yeah. They're trying to be famous. They're trying to get ahead. They're trying to be more attractive, trying to have a better social life, higher social position, which is normal. And they say, well, I bet a lot of you have tried your best to increase your social standing and make other people envious of you, haven't you? Even if you're the real stoic, cool kind, and you try and keep your head from nodding, yeah, yeah, yeah. Internally, you know, yeah, I have. And it goes, and it didn't work, did it? You're not satisfied. Of course, then life's got you again. Because as long as you can feel guilty about being alive, as long as you feel like, I had a choice somewhere along the way, and I made the wrong choice. Which, if you believe at the ordinary level that there is a matter of choice available in life, then you're always going to believe at least half the time that you made the wrong choice. Because whatever you're pursuing in the intellectual world never comes to conclusive fruition. It simply does not. In other words, if your main hobby in life is to become famous, you simply can't become famous enough. And that's not an attack on fame, it's not an attack on that hobby. Are you rich? If that is your driving hobby in life, which is, remember that we're talking about intellectual entertainment. None of this is physical. None of it is based upon the need to survive, not just physically. But if your driving entertainment and fascination in life is to get rich, you simply never get rich enough. There's no great secret. And that's not an attack. It's not any true form of a basis for guilt. You just simply cannot ever conclude that hobby. It's open-ended, the same way that the nervous system is in the neural area. So the idea, the basic idea, or picture I've tried to get you to consider, that the nervous system is never completed. I was going to pull out also one, was in here, a lover without his other half. The old story in the West is credited to the Greek mythology that originally man was one sex, and that their version, that in some way he made Zeus mad, or they had a slightly different attitude toward the gods. It could have been that Zeus just got drunk, which supposedly he used to do. Anyway, got ticked off, and if you remember, it set down some sort of bolt and split the original man in two, into the sexes, men and women. The discussion being regarding love, romance, sexual attraction, in other words, the life of the body. And the story then being that what romance I'm mad to was now everyone on this planet, everyone who's born in the past, everyone who will be born. The whole idea of romance is you are looking for your other half, that you are incomplete, which the Greeks don't need us to prop up their place in history. But you got to admit, is a pretty good story, to say the least. It's better than most of those in religions or psychology, because it answers, if you sit in a certain way, it answers, it is the proper response even to yourself of all questions regarding your attraction to others. That if someone says, how can you be attracted, every woman I ever see you with has green hair and weighs at least 400 pounds, or whatever. And if you understand, hey, I can't help it. That is my other half. Yeah. It explains it. But there's another way to look at that, is carry it beyond the physical level into the intellectual realm, or as your forefathers would think, the spiritual realm, but the intellectual realm, you have also the whole idea of mysticism, or the desire for some transcendental understanding, something metagnostic beyond what it seems to be available through any other source. You can also look at that as being a higher level reflection of that myth of man being cut in two. It does not dispel, it does not actually displace the first one, which that is still valid, that you cannot explain, nor should you, why you are attracted to someone physically, a particular person. But also then you get into why you're attracted to what you do if you get up into the area that begins to approach, let us say, the transcendental, the mystical, out of the ordinary, something of no importance either for bio or intellectual survival, this sort of stuff. There is no explanation for it. There is certainly no rational explanation that other rational, ordinary people can accept, or even your own ordinary mind can accept. But if you look on the basis that, hey, I couldn't help it. I'm like everybody else. I was born split. We've all been cut. You've heard the story. And we're not talking about the job that some warrior did on you. We're talking about Zeus. I'm not a product of Oscar Mayer. That you can say that I am is indeed helpless, because you could look at someone else, not that you'd be doing this verbally, but your attitude, you could look at everyone else in life, that they're the half, they're uncontrollably, not physically now, we're not talking about sexually, but someone else in life, at the intellectual level, they're uncontrollably seeking their other half through fame, wealth, family, social position, their art, whatever, their creative outlets, whatever it is. And they can no more help that than you could help. Go back to you, at least generically speaking, that someone could say to you, your good friend, say, how in the world can you like that guy you're with, to a girl, or that girl, she has got the worst temper. I've never heard her say a nice word, no matter what attack that somebody else might make, that supposedly you're a friend, that's not meaning you all that much ill will. And you really think, if you had any ability to think, is the truth is you don't know why. If they say, how could you do that? I know you. How can you put up with that? And you know exactly what they're saying. And you think, well, if I stood outside myself for a second and asked me how could I do it, it'd probably be dangerous, because I'd probably leave. I'd probably join you and think, you're right. How could I do that? You don't know why. But if you take that story, why it survived, I suggest to you so long, that one, forget anything else, just in a few words, I could narrow it down, or you can, that Zeus just cut everybody in two, and now life. Romance is everyone looking for the other half so they can, get together with them, and you feel like, now I'm better. You can see that answers all of those questions at the sexual level, at the physical level, but you can also see it above that level into the intellectual realm. You could see that the whole idea of what it's always been called of some mystical work, some transcendental tradition, trying to do something extraordinary with your own development, is that same thing. But then you're left, I was trying to get you to hear in a kind of tied up manner tonight, is collectively this goes on. That the whole idea of some mystical work is not limited to individuals. Oh, well, sure it is, but Jesus. You'll notice how easy it is to get out of the humorous mode if I let it go for 5 or 10 minutes, which is sort of, I guess, out of the ordinary around here. And it's hard. You don't really jump back into it, which is all right. It's more than all right. It's out of sight. The collective, the herds, but the collective of man is, one of the Amsonites said that there is a mechanicalistic evolution. It's automatic. You could call it, if you wanted to be a little more routine in the verbalization, you could call it an unconscious evolution. But of course that carries on the baggage of people believing that, or the baggage of the effect of academic, quote, psychology. But the point is, it is an unwilling, it is an unaware, it is a effortless, no matter what people say, it is simply the progress of man, collectively. And again, you can surely see for yourself, you got to be extraordinarily dense not to realize that man collectively, no matter how things may look temporarily to you as being bad, untoward, unhealthy, some noise you hear sounds unnatural. It can always seem so locally, it can seem so in a passing manner, but you've got to be extraordinarily dense, that is ordinary, not to understand that life in general is getting better. Of course, if you're ordinary, you go, well, what the hell do I care? My life's falling apart personally. Yeah. I know. And yet you're living longer than your grandmother. Yeah, I know that. And your grandfather, yeah. And you're in better shape, yeah. And there's less disease, yeah. You have to work less, yeah. And you're better off, yeah. But still, you don't know. My girlfriend just left me, and my transmission fell out again. Of course, the reason that any of this is funny is because it's not funny. I mean, it's not funny what happens to you. Well, it's not funny when your transmission falls out and your girl leaves you again. But what I was really pointing at, it is not funny on the basis of this, is you can't think about it at the ordinary level enough for it to be funny. Because it can be pointed out just like it did, and you go, well, that's true. You know, there's no doubt. If you're going to say just in a big old sweep of the whole scenario of this planet, yeah, we're better off than we were 50 years ago. And that's gone. All you do is turn right around, and you feel a pain again, or you realize it's about time to go, and you remember, I wonder if my car's going to get me home. So the whole idea, but when you hear the idea, an ordinary mind, that there is without any doubt a continuing, unabated march of evolution in a mechanical manner for everyone, that everyone on this planet right now, collectively speaking, not speaking individualistic right this second about one person, because right now somebody is falling off a building. Somebody's having a car fall on them when they were trying to work on your transmission. Somebody's starving to death. We know all that. Somebody's dying right now. But collectively, everybody on this planet, everyone on this planet is in better shape than their grandmother was, their grandfather. That's simply a fact. And everybody with any sanity has to go, well, that's true. Then they won't say, but. Screw a but. You just have to see that's true. And stop the but. Stop the exception, because the exception's always, wait a minute, let me tell you. Give yourself that carte blanche to start with. Say, all right, the whole world's evolving, but I'm going to die. All right, so after that, the rest of it's just kind of chicken shit. For you have to say, oh, my transmission fell out. Yeah, but you're going to die. Yeah, but I may lose my job. But you're going to die. What the hell? The parade goes on. See, that is always was the way things work in the polarized realization of the world through an ordinary mind. You literally, it's not just me saying so, anyone, cannot keep a continuing awareness that that's true. Because if we start playing this game of trying to stretch reality like a rubber ball, like a ball of silly putty, and we call that the human existence, you pull it over here and it will snap back somewhere else. And so I'm playing that game, but if you can make ordinary people aware of the fact, everyone on this planet, all the middle class, middle of the road, sane people on this planet, and they'll all admit, yeah, you're right. Speaking in general, the whole world, I guess, is better off, all right, than we were 50 years ago. And you say, all right, I'm going to work a magical power, and I'm going to make you keep that recollection. And you might even get some go, well, that would probably be a good idea, because they could rationalize it for a second. They explain it. I say, well, why? Now, I can give it to you. Do you really want me to? And they go, yeah. And I say, well, you got to tell me why. And they go, well, because it would change my perspective. It would give me a new sense of value. It would keep me from getting all tied up in all these little old mundane, run-of-the-mill things every day if I could just hold this awareness that you're right, that everything is getting better. They could even say that. That could be their sales pitches, why I should do it for them. But again, playing if we could have it both ways, which we couldn't, if you could do that to an ordinary person, I assure you, he would come back faster than King Midas did if he had had a second just before he reached down to take a leak. You know, when everything he touched turned. That wasn't the story, was it? He patted his kid on the head. I like mine better, but. In case you never thought of that story, I guess we mentioned in passing, but that old story about King Midas, which is a beautiful, but again, in the partisan ordinary world, you know that the story starts out, you can smell, it just reeks of a moral. That this king, which most people are pissed already here, once upon a time was a king. You think, boy, I hope something terrible is going to happen to him if it's a good tale. And it says, and this king, and he was real greedy. And people say, oh boy, I like it already, because you know a greedy person, you know the literature of ordinary humanity, that he's going to come to a sorry end. And it said he was so greedy. He got so greedy that some way, I forget how it happened, he helped a genie or bought a genie, or somebody in his court helped a genie and got a wish, and he bought it from him. And the wish was that everything he would touch would turn to gold. So there you go. We're back to the hobby. Instead of being attacked, that is a reasonable hobby for anybody to have. I mean, if you're a king, what's you going to do? You can already have everybody killed. You're in charge, and you think, what's left? Well, I'll get richer than everybody else. So the wish was anything I touch will turn to gold, which sounds like, wait a minute. We may finally have the exception, a man who will come to a conclusive, fruitful end of his form of interest in life. That is, he will become rich because he can go around and touch anything. Another story, I think, wasn't it? He finally touched his little daughter, patted her on the head when she came in, and then went, my God. And of course, that was the end of the story. That, teach you a lesson, by God. He wanted to, killed his daughter. I still like mine better. I like mine better if you drug it out that he started to pat his daughter, and it scared everybody to death, see? If you were reading the story, my version, and he went, oh, no. And then even he was at church or somewhere. The priest or rabbi blessed him. He almost wanted to go up and embrace him, to show his love for spiritual. And caught himself again, and was so proud of himself. And he says, "I'll be right back." Walking, outside behind the church or somewhere, went to take a leak. I like mine better. And then went, "Oh my God!" But anyway, that was another. If you never thought about a story about the collective, and anyway, overcoming. Back to where we were. There is. Back to where we were, one sidestep. Back to the sidestep. We weren't even back to the main track yet. Is that ordinary men cannot keep in mind, because what it would do to them if they were aware. Back to where, if you remember where we were 2 minutes ago, that if somebody said, you're right, if I could be aware of the fact that life in general is getting better, no matter what happens to me right this second, boy, I'd be better off. It just changed my whole perspective. My relative sense of values would change for the better. Wrong. If you could do it to an ordinary person, he'd be like King Midas. It'd be worse than he killed his daughter. People, they would go nuts. They would die, even while being alive. It would be a gradual kind of intellectual suicide. They simply could not tolerate it. All right, look at it another way. Ordinary people say, boy, life is a pain. Life is nothing but just small irritants, just one after the other. Right. That's why you're ordinary. That's what life is. And people think, I would like for things to go perfectly for me. I know they say that. Life says that. Which is one reason, again, if you'd like to consider the continuing appearance, well, it's continually there, but the continuing public resurfacing of the idea that men are too civilized. The continuing dumbing kind of entertainment, the kind of regressive entertainment that they don't know how to analyze it, but it's men wishing that we could go back from us being now driven by intellectual hobbies which are never capable of full fruition, conclusion. Boy, I wish we could go back to where I was nothing. But, like a JB, a drinking, eating, screwing machine. I wish I was back to the physical level, that was it. Of course, I still want my personality. I still want to be charming. In other words, you want it all, but God, I wish. What they're saying is, I wish my mind, this disturbance in me, my soul, my spirit, but it's my mind. I wish it could be as satisfied, my mind, as my privates are when I get through with a good bout of sex. I wish that my mind, I wish that my soul, my spirit, my cosmic entity could be as satiated and as satisfied and as peaceful as my stomach is after 2 quarts of Haagen-Dazs. And a couple of brownies. Well, you understand, and it's not possible. But there is, man is a sitting duck, which also is what religion is in a sense. It mixes the two up. But it is a continual appeal. It is almost it is an indirect promise, because think what heaven is by all religions. They don't say you'll be intelligent. They don't say that you'll have the artistic touch of a Mozart or a Rembrandt. What do all religions say? It's all about the body. The Western world, being the prigs that they are, is mostly about, well, it'll be where you never get old, overweight, or sick. Other parts of the world, such as the Muslims' idea of paradise, they expand a bit further. They're just more in your face about it, that you'll never get old, you'll never get sick, you'll never get impotent. And there'll be all the beautiful women you want, because the religion was originally for man, as God intended. Not religion, paradise. Men could not abide if they could have that kind of continuing awareness that life is progressing, even though what may temporarily seem to be happening to me. Men do know that. It's not a theory. And it's not just something that I suddenly came up with. Obviously not. I mean, that's simple as hell. You go, well, you're right. There's no doubt. There's no doubt we're in better shape as a whole than we were 50 years ago. But then, of course, as always, people will say, but wait till I tell you about me. Yeah. They could not hold that awareness. They're not supposed to. So what is it that a few individuals seem to be involved with some strange activity, all the way from it actually going on inside of an individual to the kind of would-be kind of offshoots of herd activity, cults, would-be mysticism, etc. What is it that they are actually after? And the answer is very specifically, I put it several ways tonight, they are attempting to complete themselves during their lifetime, contrary to what's true with everyone else. It is, even by its own definition, by humanity's own description, it is without any doubt unnatural. It doesn't mean it's illegal or fattening or immoral, but it is truly unnatural because you already have humanity evolving. All you've got to do is sit there if you've got any sense. I'll say one more time, we'll all admit, if you're ordinary, and I say, well, the evolution of the collective is effortless. You got to jump back waiting for hands going, wait a minute, you don't know my story. Yeah. Transmission, toothache, bad job, don't like your wife, bad feet, yeah, I know. But there is a kind of awareness that people know without knowing it. They know that humanity collectively is progressing. They know that things are in general getting better. They cannot apply that, nor should they, in any continuing way to their awareness about themselves. Because the facts of their individual life, if your consciousness is no more than the ordinary, it's not a matter of you being dumb, some ordinary person, because we're talking about our parents, your parents. And they're not dumb. We're talking about your friends. We're talking about our president, our prime minister, our politicians. They're not dumb. Maybe I went too far. Back to your mother and father and our personal friends. They're not dumb. They're only as conscious as the general parade. They're only as conscious as the collective, which is natural. Their intellectual life, as your parents, I'm sure most of yours would still call it, if they called it anything, their spiritual life, their cultural life. Not about coverage. They would know. All of you came from civilized stock to varying degrees. They would know what we mean by, it's not just your parents worrying about, getting a nose job, or not just health, not just aging, not just how much paper money they have, how much paper wealth, but they would understand what you meant by spiritual development or spiritual fulfillment or intellectual, cultural, artistic. Collectively, it does not happen, because collectively that would be the suicide of the planet. It would be the suicide of the planet vis-a-vis man on this planet, which is what makes this planet what it is. In case you'd like to write that now. Oh. In case you'd like to take that with a positive note. You big lug of a planet, you. Get out of here. Collectively, humanity never reaches a point of completion, spiritually, intellectually. this also, without straining your eyes at all, is why things always seem to be somewhat amiss, no matter where you look at any time, from any reasonable, ordinary view. You look around, and there's absolute insanity, absolute regression going on. You just look on there, look at there, people killing innocent children, and that's part of our European stock, or it's part of our African stock. Whoever you are, you can look anywhere on this planet and say, well, look at that. Those are educated people, and look what they're doing. Sure. Only Mr. Happy Face, or Alfred E. Newman, or somebody says, oh, life is great, or is that, never mind. You can pick out the specifics. I was just pointing out the obvious, that is the reason the specific apparent anomalies exist is because that humanity collectively is never, the parade never ends. People are not intellectually, / spiritually, / culturally, etc., ever to the point of completion. And that's not hard to see for a second. That collectively, if you're ever waiting for humanity, that is collectively, it's what other people call humanity, if you're waiting for them to suddenly become more conscious, to wake up, to become civilized, to stop wars, to stop injustice, whatever ordinary people find to be a complaint, and I understand that they have more than several about each other, if you're waiting collectively for any of that to be cured, even to be treated seriously, as Buddha's brother-in-law used to say, do not holdeth thy breatheth. If you got any expectation of living to the weekend. And it's not on the basis of evil. But then ordinary people are left with the kinds of myths that grew up from the myths that originally was explaining how the dynamics physically work on this planet. In a three-dimensional reality of it being polarized, partisan, it's always a dichotomous intellectual view of everything. And so since life has to have that kind of bifurcation even intellectually in man, then man ends up with these opposing positions of good and evil in the same way life needs it, in the same way that a man needs two legs to walk. So men have ended up taking the original explanations as strange, as crude, as simplistic, as ancient as they were, and they turned into ideas of good and evil, and then, amongst other things, but then, of course, you've got the anomalies, that is, those exceptions, what appears to be, well, what ordinary people take is, no doubt, exception to progress. People killing each other right now, either on a large scale or somebody just walks in a 7-Eleven store right now and just doesn't like the way that somebody looks at them behind the cash register and shoots them. Now you can say, I'm not disputing that, that's silly. Anybody can say, well, that is not only is that not an example of progress, that is some example of regression. At least life standing still, okay. But to attribute that to evil, to attribute that to anything outside of what it is to, again, mistake the mythical message, which was the actual detellings of the physical dynamics of this reality, is you mistake it for literal stories, that people are evil. People are not evil. It's just inside the parade, anything can happen. You're talking about a parade of 6 billion people. If you guys want to get technical, I don't know. 5 billion and a half sane people. The rest of them will leave to include that other 500 million, anybody you want to. So you got a parade of at least 5.5 billion people marching along, and it is collective progress. And inside of that, you've got room for almost everything. But what is this sort of activity if it's happening to an individual, if they're actually doing it? It is truly unnatural. It's why it is oftentimes accused of being, which is not the point, but it's why it has the reputation amongst those right in the middle of the parade, the more conservative, the more tight-assed, middle-class, right-thinking ordinary people, the more this sort of thing is always smells suspicious. Thank God it's always had the protection of having, for each one person, let's say, that's actually ever done this, there's been X number of hundreds of thousands, even at the same time, pretending and trying to do it. And they do it in such a way that the ordinary look at them and go, God, boy, what a bunch of crackpots. In fact, they could be dangerous, and sometimes they are. Not dangerous that they'll upset the parade, just dangerous enough that the parade has to take a sudden sidestep just for a moment and go, that's the end of that. But at least the few have always had a certain kind of protection, although that's not the purpose of it, I'm sure. Well, who cares? But at least it's kind of protection, because they always look at the ones and going, God, what a bunch of crackpots. Or, and of course, the more they do that, stupidity. There was one tonight, for those of you who didn't get it, that said it was a connection. It was the connection between intelligence and appearance. And it said the impact of being stupid can be somewhat lessened if you're good looking, which always helps, or dress funny. Now, I left it at that, but if you consider things about, well, let's say you're living in Alabama and you start wearing robes and a turban and some kind of painted stuff on your head. And didn't help, did it? All right, how about if you lived in South Alabama and you're a man, you look like Robert Redford, you can get by with it. Maybe you don't know what inbreeding's done to certain parts of the South. All right, how about this? The impact of being stupid or strange can be lessened. How about this? If you just look fairly normal. Does that help? Maybe the problem is there's too many of you from the Appalachian region and southern Alabama, and you're taking it personally. God, I just spotted one. No wonder you're not laughing. Ask him if he brought his banjo, maybe he can play Deliverance. It is literally unnatural, because you're doing, we're back to, again, a kind of ephemeral detailing of what the great mystical work, the great mystical tradition, etc. is. But you can keep coming up with explanations. The only reason I do it is for you to hear it in different ways, that there is a reality to it. And there is a reality to a general outline. If we had it hung up there and I could throw knives at it, shoot around it, and just do a kind of general outline. But one of the operational fair descriptions is that it is truly unnatural on the basis that you are attempting, those who really do it, you're attempting, and you start off not knowing this, and it's just one description, but you're attempting to complete the evolution of man, and by man we might as well say collectively of humanity. You're attempting to do it in your lifetime, for you. And I point out to you, if you're taking my just one mapping of how this is going, it does not happen. The collective evolution of man does not finish. It never finishes. If it finishes, we be finished. So that's that. So if it does finish and I was proven wrong, at least I'll be safe, because you won't be able to find me and say, hey, you were finally wrong. The collective evolution of man does not complete itself. Cannot, will not, does not, it just moves on. Someone attempting to do this sort of thing, no matter what it's called, and no matter how they start off thinking about it, no matter how they end up thinking about it, they were trying to do one thing. They were trying to complete it now. That is in their lifetime. What could be more unnatural than that if you're taking, just if nothing else, for a thought game, for intellectual consideration? If my premise, if my description is fair and valid, if you start with that, well, just take it as an experiment. If the parade never ends, if the evolution collectively of humanity never reaches conclusive fruition, if that's the name of it, if that is the natural state, then for a person to attempt to do it themselves, you got no choice but to say, well, that would certainly meet the classification under those terms of unnatural. Yeah. Because it is. How this strange hunger hides and operates. We'll try this one again. The subject has not been changed drastically. There is a certain fuel necessary to run all engines. And when taken away, makes a few run even better. Being personally acquainted with the author of these terms, I could in fact expand on it in several directions. I could simplify it, I could crudify it, I could exemplify it into a specific. There's a certain fuel necessary to run all engines. A quick expansion of it. There is a fuel running the collective evolution of man, running all engines. But this one, that all engines, is like each individual person is run by a certain fuel. you do understand that we're not talking about the body, because everybody runs off the same fuel. There's a certain fuel necessary to run all engines, and when taken away, makes a few run even better. Look at it. All right, one example. I could exemplify it if it'll help to start with. What if we said what if we said the energy, which is not that, but this certain fuel? What if we said it was hostility? And what if we said it was ambition? What if we said it was dissatisfaction? What if we said it was uncertainty? Somewhere, take any range. You understand, all I'm talking about is the kind of so-called emotions that are exemplary of man's intellectual, cultural, artistic, spiritual activity in life. Hostility could be one. You could say that the evolution of humanity is a certain, how about aggression? Because it is not necessarily a negative statement, because we could say that whoever invented the first jet engine, we could say he had a certain aggression against the combustible engine-driven airplane. Or we could say the first person whoever invented the neon light had an aggressive attitude toward the incandescent. In other words, all progress, you could say the person whoever thought of it, whoever worked on it, if we're going to play with individual people, had a certain kind of aggression toward a previous invention, which is simply saying that the parade has moved past 2nd Street to 3rd Street, and certain people have a certain kind of aggressive attitude now about 3rd Street. They go, well, hey, we should be doing better than this. No. For one thing, you're never going to stand out of the parade if you march along. You want to get ahead. The collective, the parade itself wants to get ahead. So we could say that there is that kind of fuel and call it aggression. We call it anything we want to. As for an example, almost. There's a certain fuel necessary to run all engines, necessary to fuel the collective evolution of man, necessary to drive the parade. So let's say ambition or hostility. Sounds better. People always find it easier. Think about that in your spare time. If it sounds as though it is a guilt-laden or a pejorative term used or a pejorative example. So it sounds better. It's easier to start off with if you say aggression rather than ambition, because ambition can sound rather neutral. There's a certain fuel, let's say, aggression, necessary to run all engines, and when taken away, makes a few run even better. Now, could you consider, if we were going to use aggression as an example, there's a certain fuel running the ordinary evolution. How about the ordinary life of man? I can make it easier. That runs everybody. And you can say, okay, yeah, there's got to be some truth in that. And then say, yes. And when taken away, and you think, wait a minute, if it runs everybody, then if you took it away from somebody, that would have a detrimental effect. Well, all right, if gasoline runs all automobiles, and we're all automobiles, and you say, there's this certain fuel, breed gasoline, that runs all automobiles, and we're each an automobile. And it says, and when taken away, I mean, you can fill in the rest. If you're an ordinary sane automobile, you say, when taken away from a particular one, he won't run. That's obvious, except it says, if I'm reading this correctly, but when taken away, it makes a few run even better. How about skip the example? How about skip the specifics? Which you've got to do to ever get out of the parade. You've got to be able to think without the specifics. There's a certain fuel that runs humanity, which runs the collective of humanity. And when taken away, it makes a few run even better. What? Run even better? That's insane. Well, the final one tonight, it said that a guy said, anybody try to do this is crazy. And the second guy says, yeah, I know. Yeah. And the first guy said, well, so why did I bother to tell you? Yeah. It's nice to leave on a natural note, because the rest of that had to do with, the allegory of the baseball game. It was a sports update to help get everybody out of it after that. It's the bottom of the ninth. Which makes it sound more dramatic, like, wait, is he insinuating that he knows or suspects that life is coming to an end? Bottom of the ninth, 2 out. I knew it. Where's all the lovers of the apocalypse? Just think about it. Doesn't that sound good? It's the end. It says, all right, sports update. To make up for that, see, that was a little joke at the end, like we'll leave on a more pleasant note. Something that doesn't sound kind of weird. Sports update. Okay, bottom of the ninth, 2 out. A hush falls over the stand. Doesn't that sound, then you just know it's going to be something. If I say especially, all right, last item. And blah, 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 blah. And that's all right. And the conclusion is a sports update. You just know it's right. 2 out, bottom of the ninth. Would it have been the same if I said 1 out, bottom of the second? You could certainly say something after that, but that's not right, damn it. I mean, if it's going to be something conclusive, it's going to be a moral, it's going to be even an uplifting statement, it's got to be uplifting statement. 2 outs, bottom of the ninth. Yeah. How come it can't be first inning, nobody out? What kind of damn moral can come after that? Well, it certainly couldn't be a natural moral. It'd have to be an unnatural moral. It'd have to be a moral, the kind of which only a mystically inclined dog trainer with a whistle could blow, because only certain people could hear the moral after that. The first ball has yet to be thrown out. Now, what's the moral? Well, if you're an individual. Do we have 2 beers and a hot dog over here?